Chapter 99, The Spell. Sometimes I get the sense that Michael has been really the biggest and most manipulative snake of them all. So much so, he even manipulates himself into thinking a certain way. Nikki then reflected over that for a second and then thought, nah. On impulse, Nikki didn't want to let Michael go because she felt like Michael was the only piece she ever had full control over. I never had more control over another person like I had with him. And ever since that night, seeing as how he did all that for me, even after all the years we've been apart, he was still willing to jump through all those hoops and hurdles for me. And back then, all he ever wanted was for me to hold him some nights when he felt afraid and alone. That made Nikki frown, feeling the pity of it. That, or blowing for hours on end. Nikki faintly chuckled. I've never had to persuade him to do anything for me, ever really. He'd just do it most of the time. It'd be like second nature for him. Like how he just attacked LeBron that night without even thinking. Of course, that wasn't exactly the wisest thing to do at that moment. I would have rather had LeBron smack me around a couple of times than to have him try to throw us out of a window. Michael can be so stupid sometimes. Too stupid. But then Nikki began to feel a bit different about her Michael here, as his indifference towards her began to wear her in. Why did you attack those cops that night, huh? After you almost killed those two numbskulls, you just had to turn on a bunch of blues and try to kill them too? This was something that had made a monumental difference in their relationship at the time and had made Nikki want to break away from him. And then you went to prison for all those years because of what you did, leaving me behind with that jackass Madboy who kept trying to get to me as a means to get to you finally. Nikki was sort of giving Michael hateful stares to see if he'd notice as she continued in this train of thought. And I heard about all the other stuff you also did that night, heading to Big Dick's gym and hospitalizing 6 guys and making enemies with all of them. Plus you attacked Greasy Locks again, and now he's fed up with you, and he's been looking to put a hit on your head, which I had to take off by paying him off that, and I had to pay off the Beefcakes and Stumpy and the Nymphomanics, because they all don't want to see you coming back out and having things go back to the way they used to be. Back in the day, how they were in the 70s, with your beef with everyone, always out to prove something by going around. And I really don't know if I want it either. Nikki began shaking her head a little, discreetly, which Michael still seemed to be indifferent about. Maybe this is it. Nikki began shaking a little more, but discreetly, to see if Michael would at least start wondering why she was. But still there was no reaction. This was starting to make Nikki feel depressed. Michael, you are so stupid. I've forgotten how you were back then. And now thinking about it, most of the time back then I felt like I was babysitting a T-Rex on a cattle ranch, trying to keep you out of trouble. Every time you saw beef, you had to charge forward and sink your teeth into it. Then when you made a mess out of everything, you started singing Queen songs, completely oblivious to the shitstorm you'd cause. Then when I intervened, you'd turn on me and try to sink your teeth into me as well. Nikki couldn't help but to start sprouting a smile, thinking now, either try to fuck me or complain I was being too bossy. You can be so stupid, Michael. And I can't believe how I now can't wait to have that lifestyle back. Idiot, whispered Nikki now as she looked away. Then looked forward to see if Michael had caught on to that. You could be such a... But then Nikki had a small chuckle over the whole T-Rex bit and thought... That was sort of funny what I thought there, actually. Had me imagining it all, and it's not something I would be thinking. More like something you would. That's really your sense of humor that I guess eventually rubbed off on me during the years I knew you. Nikki smiled. If I do get you back, I'm not going to be having the peaceful life I'd like to settle on. My fantasy, a peaceful life somewhere far from here, away from everyone and everything. My fantasy where I can just have that estate on an island in the Pacific near the shore. Fenced off from the rest of the world, peacefully living alone with nothing but my materialistic fancies to keep me busy. My statue collection, my paintings, my designer line of clothing, my books, and all the other items in between. Call a person vain for settling on materialism to satisfy their ambitions all you want. They're still capable of creating an imaginary world around you where you won't need to step outside your door to find something to live for. Statues can speak to you if you listen close enough, filling up with the social void left behind. Paintings can dazzle your imagination of places and people you've never seen. Designer clothing, well, they can make you into a new person when you grow weary of your old self. And as for books, they can tell you stories bound only by the authors and your imagination. Of course, with Michael here, a wild animal thrown into the mix, he'd probably wreck everything, and then try to bend me over and fuck me as a way of apologizing for all he's done. Do I really want that back in my life? Looking at Michael, Nikki felt a resounding yes. An imaginary world? It would still be something fake I tried to substitute for something real, just because it would be easier to control. I don't want to be alone anymore. I want to now at least share my fantasy with someone else, someone that's been the closest to me ever. And now looking at Michael and checking him out, Nikki started getting horny. Or were we good together? How good it felt. He spent hours and hours trying everything on me to find the right pattern to get me off. The next day he'd start over from scratch and take it to newer heights. He would start licking and kissing and fondling every inch of me, then would speak about how he wished he could open me up and lick and kiss and fondle my insides. Lick my brain, kiss my heart, suck my bones, and fondle my ovaries. And as weird and twisted as that all sounded at first, he had me yearning for it so bad that I wished he could, just to see how it would feel to have him touch me in all those places too. He had me screaming so loud one time that I shattered a wine bottle we'd be drinking out of before. And years after he went to prison, I'd be taking a bath daydreaming while... Fuck, I want that back. Fuck my imaginary world. Eventually I was going to get bored by it all anyways. Bored by all the fakeness. And what was I going to be left with then? Let him wreck it all. At least he'll never stop being real to me. I traded it all in just to have him. Nikki, you alright? You're breathing heavily. What's wrong? Asked Michael with a warmth of fluorescent lights, leaving Nikki feeling sterile and depressed. No, Michael, why are you so distant right now? You used to want to kiss my heart. Now you can't even look me in the... Nikki began to think maybe I should let go. Because the truth now was, just how much was she willing to cling on to Michael if he no longer had the desire to cling back? Nikki sighed. Maybe I should. No! It's not just the sex I miss with him. He's the only person that's never scared me or frightened me. He's such a child. I always felt like he could be genuine with me and never two-faced, as cocky, inconsiderate, and downright mean as children can be. At least they're always 100% genuine with you. Michael, I will get you out of here, don't worry, cried out Nikki, hoping those words could sway him back into her midst. But Michael didn't reply. I mean it, Michael. I can make that happen. I can make those types of connections. Plus, money isn't an issue for me anymore. When I told a friend of my family, my dad's old lawyer, of my situation, he told me my father had saved away enough for just an occasion, enough to survive. But once Nikki blurted out the word money, she then noticed just how wrong a move that was as Michael's face began to sour up. Say something else. Michael, remember what I told you about Tahiti? I can get us there now. Just you and me. Can you imagine that? Cried out Nikki, remembering how hopeful Michael had gotten over the idea, even if it was for a second. But Michael just rolled his eyes and said nothing. Nikki grew irritated as she felt like she was losing all control over him and began to feel desperation growing in. Whatever you say, just don't bring up that swallowing again. Oh, I really have no idea how to be intimate. Michael, please, I want us to be together again. Please don't push me away. Why? Murmured out Michael with an air of indifference. Michael, I need you now. Oh, come on, you don't sound like you mean it. Why do I always feel so closed up in important moments like these when it's for real and it has nothing to do with business? Why? Murmured out Michael again, this time with an air of sorrow. Because I care about you, cried out Nicky as others began to notice. That still doesn't sound right. Michael now had a full-blown expression of sorrow on his face as he looked down, opened his mouth, and asked, Why? Again, but this time murmured it out so faintly it almost didn't even register. Nikki fell back in her chair and looked into Michael's eyes that were now spewing out the color of gray, the color and feel, and now into her eyes, trying to infect her with it. This was all becoming way too disheartening for her, making her want to cry with dried up tears. Nikki was now feeling full-on pity towards him, like she would at times looking at her father. Oh no! And Michael was the last person she wanted to feel that way about. No, please. If we are to get back together, I don't want us to turn into him and her. Them two, please let that never happen. Nikki didn't want Michael to be this awkward mess because she felt like he was better than that, better than this. Nikki wanted the old vibrant stallion back, not this broken mule. And she didn't realize she needed to reawaken his senses to get him back. And she had to do it the only way she knew how. I have to use it on him. I can't be genuine right now. I have to. Michael, do you know when I first fell for you? Once Michael heard her ask that, it broke the curse of grayness that was cast over his face. And finally, he seemed the most alert he had been all day. This was at the Tropic. It was after that thing me, you, and Roxy had. I remember I was at the bar waiting for you, but then I was approached by several ravishers, most worth mentioning, Greasy Locks. There were about 8 of them there, including Greasy, and they were just eyeing me like a piece of meat. They all started hitting on me, buying me drinks, trying to fill me up, and then Greasy moved his head in and asked, Ever had a train ran on you? Nikki watched Michael's face as she told her story, and once she mentioned Greasy and the line he had fed her, Michael's face began to fire up a bit in disapproval. I shook my head, feeling disgusted as Greasy smiled and said, Don't be so proud. You know you want it, really. When I tried to leave, he got pissed and dragged me to the side and started calling me a whore, a rich daddy girl piece of shit, heartless bitch. Nikki watched Michael's face as the story began to stir him up with anger. Michael, before us, me and him, we used to be a thing. Disclosed Nikki. You and him? Gasped Michael, unwilling to believe it. Michael, that was a long time ago, and I didn't know how much of a perverted asshole that jerk really was. Explained Nikki. Okay, I can understand that. Said Michael. Michael, when he started berating me like that, at that second I felt everything he said. Explained Nikki, feeling the words again as if though it was yesterday. Nikki's mouth opened to continue, but then Greasy's words struck a chord in her deeply. Maybe I am just that, nothing more. No, if I am, people made me this way. I didn't start off. Thought Nikki, but then looked into Michael's eyes and smiled, remembering what happened next. I was really feeling low of myself then, but then you stepped in. Continued Nikki, as the events began to affect her now as they did back then. I mean, at first we both just heard a growl in the corner, and then we saw you there. And a second later, you just launched at Greasy and rammed your fist into his face, and grabbed him and threw him across the bar, recounted Nikki in excitement. And then when Greasy's buddies tried to rush you, you just began beating the crap out of all of them. I mean, wow. I had heard you were a tough son of a bitch from Mary, but you were like Superman taking on 8 guys single-handedly. Nikki then blushed. And I hope this doesn't sound too cheesy, but at the moment I felt like Lois Lane. Continued Nikki as she made a funny face. At this point, Nikki looked into Michael's face again as she began to see her old Mikey coming back to her. His face seemed just as exhilarated from the story she was telling him as hers were. Nikki felt that and how Michael was now feeling how much he mattered to her. then and now, and how much he had excited her, and how much it meant that he was willing to do all that for someone so undeserving like her. I mean, you were doing all that for me, cheered out Nikki. I've never had a man or simply anyone do something like that for me. Every person in my life always thought less of me in the end. Then Nikki began to remember how much it also awakened her to Michael in a different way, in ways she never felt for any other man. Then I saw you drag Greasy Locks from behind the bar, sit on his chest, and begin pummeling his face into the ground. And excited Nikki as she made Michael wait for it. Wait to ask. What? Asked Michael. Something else happened then, too. I wasn't just excited how you were willing to do all that for me. You were so fucking hot, too. Were you? While pounding his face in? While covered in sweat? While panting from the rush? As all your muscles began bulging up and... woof. I practically fell head over heels in love with you. Well, at least for a teenager, which I was at the time. Nikki, feeling the sexual charge of that memory while feeding it to Michael, then looked at him in his eyes and felt pleased to see how it had done the same. He was biting his lower lip so hard he looked like he was going to chew it off. The exhilaration Michael was feeling, realizing how much he had excited Nikki with his deeds, seemed to really be taking his understanding of his role in her life to a new level. You really didn't understand it until now, did you, Michael? Not only did you not make me feel frightened like I am all the time, you made me feel the opposite. I felt like I was just as strong as you in moments like those, in which I've never been. Michael, as Nikki paused again, Michael turned around to see what anticipation she was building up next. Michael, you blew my stupid fucking teenage mind away that day, stated Nikki, and waited for the realization to sink in for the both of them. And as it hit, Nikki now felt like she had done it. Oh wow, I really did it, did I? Thought Nikki as she found herself panting a little along with Michael and feeling strangely predatorial and cat-like. Oh wow, I need to get him back. I simply need to. And seeing Michael, she then saw how he was having his own moment. His own special small moment to himself in his own special way, which Nikki was all too familiar with. Whisking his head back and forth like an excited child. And seeing and remembering this, Nikki smiled. I did it, I really... But then something else stirred. Wait, what? Something on the opposite spectrum. Wait, what? No. Which Nikki wasn't so sure what it was. What's going on? What's going on? I did it. But then she realized, oh. And now she asked herself the question. Am I really doing this for him, or am I really doing it for myself?